Okay. Isaac Martinez, thank you for agreeing to do this. You had no idea. You just said, "Hey, I'm going to come over to your place. We're going to drink some beer." And I said, "Okay, well, cool. I just need your help with something while I'm there." And turns out that the help I needed was to sit down with a camera and microphones and all this
Yeah,
really intimidating like studio gear
yeah,
with bright lights in our face,
it was good.
so that we look as attractive as possible to all those viewers out there that all six of the viewers that are going to see
Millions, all
this.
the millions
Yeah.
of viewers.
Um, this is kind of episode 2 or
Okay.
maybe episode 1.5
And
since it was
should I not look over there? I mean, am I messing things up by
yeah.
asking that
So
question?
what? Yeah. So we have like a camera where we have
Okay.
a laptop set up right over here,
Okay.
so that so that we can kind of see what's going on.
Okay.
But and this is my explanation to the
Okay.
people
The
watching.
audience, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I totally understand.
So it can be a little bit distracting. So
So
I
professional on the camera, man.
yeah yeah. Isaac just happened to work out. I needed to test all this stuff out because I'm doing like a on location on Friday, um, and I wanted to make sure I was ready to do that. And Isaac's more forgiving than most people because he's a friend of mine. So, and it worked out because Isaac, you happen to own your own business or be
Yeah.
self-employed, and so I guess just tell me a little bit about let's give me a little bit of background of kind of what kind of work you do and where you do it and how you do it, and just kind of give me an overview, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I didn't. It definitely wasn't the traditional. Um, I, I mean, I say it's not traditional, but very little in life happens in the traditional way. But started off in insurance, and I thought that's kind of where I was going to go. I loved it. Still do. I think about it often in the sense that
Did you have like a safety plan in case insurance didn't work out?
no.
That was an insurance joke, but I'm
No.
sorry, I
Oh,
cut
okay.
you off right in the
No,
middle.
okay.
I didn't let you roll.
You
That's like
that is a
amateur
that
shit,
is a dad
amateur.
joke,
Yeah,
and
dad joke.
you do have a
Because I'm a
kid.
dad.
You're
Yeah.
a dad now for sure.
All
I'm
right,
gonna
so
take the
you're in insurance. I'm sorry.
so yeah, in insurance. I thought I was gonna do that. I definitely thought I had the ability and the wherewithal to do it all, and it just never took off. I tried all kinds of different things, and yeah, it was pretty disappointing. In fact, there's still some kind of sense of disappointment about the whole situation. But what it led to was what I do now, and we had already been flipping house. Well, not flipping. We had rented a couple of houses that we had. I have a mentor of mine who just really kind of encouraged me in that direction. He was, um, yeah, just pretty vital piece of it. Um, but
Okay, so what you do now is essentially
we uh,
purchase
we purchase
purchase
and
residential
remodel.
real
Yeah,
estate,
yeah,
remodel,
yep,
etc.
yep.
Yeah.
Thanks for guiding me there. I need it
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. So we had a couple of rental houses when I was doing insurance, and I had always known or kind of had an idea that hey, having residual income outside of what you do for a living is just a good idea. And so we had these rentals, but I never thought of it as this is what I'm going to be doing. And fast forward about a year after,
Just a little mailbox money.
yeah, about a year after I quit my job, I'm not making jack, and really thinking about my wife and two kids, and so I just, yeah, I mean, there was almost like a come to Jesus where I sat down and I was like, okay, how can you go from point A to point B the quickest, which is cash? Like, how do I get cash? And the housing thing was already happening in the sense that we had two rentals, and then our neighborhood in particular was booming. And so I kind of had an in already, and I went for it. So an opportunity presented itself. Went for it last year, at the beginning of last year, um, and then that went well, and things have just kind of progressed from there. Where we bought one house, we were able to fix it up and sell it. Went really well, and then the next house we bought, I thought I was going to fix it up, but ended up someone bought it for me early, and now we're on to some other houses. There was a house kind of in between that story, but and that's really where learning happened, but that's it.
Yeah, so I guess so. Kind of with this, I like to talk about just generally, what it takes, and we'll get more into this, but what it takes, just from a internal spirit perspective, to be out on your own. But I do like to deep dive into the nerdy stuff and like don't hold back, like. I mean, if we need to start talking about, regression analysis or, whatever it takes to explain your point. So, like what makes from your perspective, I guess let's start with um, when you're looking to purchase a property, like what makes a property a good purchase option.
Right. So it's always on a inefficient kind of market, right? You're looking at a neighborhood that's not everything's uniform, and not everything's cookie cutter, where every single house is selling for the exact same price.
Right.
Because then it's a lot harder to kind of squeeze in.
Because you pretty much work in an old neighborhood, right? Like a
Right.
historic 100-year-old.
100-year-old houses. In fact, that's solely what we've done. I think there's 7 or 8 now that we've done, and every single one of them has been, over 90 years old. And so, yeah, so it's one of those things where one house might be worth half a million, and the very next house might be worth $150,000 or $200,000 because it's not been touched in 50 years. And so that's what I look for. I look for houses that are dilapidated, falling down, depressed, um, or there might be an elderly couple living there that and I happen to live in the neighborhood, so I drive the neighborhoods often. Like I will, I'm not.
So I'm guessing you usually get involved before the real estate sign gets put out.
Yeah, so I've there's only been one of those houses that I've ever purchased when there was a real estate when there was a sign on the yard. Other than that, it's been a knock on the door, a note left, a message on Facebook, a introduction from a friend, and so they happen different ways. Um, but yeah, so the way that I find or look for a house is just you kind of have to remind yourself that there's always a deal sitting out there, and it's your job to just go out there and find it.
Yeah, I think something you told me once that I believe it would be is it your great grandfather-in-law
Mm-hmm.
who recently passed?
Yep.
God rest his soul.
Yep.
He said, Isaac, what does he say?
You're gonna run out of money before you run out of deals.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that because I come across people so many times that say like, man, I should have, man, if I had just,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, okay, well, what you need to do is you need to turn that perspective to present day and go, what are you gonna regret a year from
Right.
now, 2 years from now?
Right.
Look around you and look for the signs of what you're gonna regret down the road, because otherwise you're gonna be in a perpetual loop of a year from now, 2 years from now, going, man,
Yeah.
if I had even, I'd said I was going to, and so I think that's part of it is just realizing that, yeah, I mean the world has been expanding, economy has been expanding for you know really hundreds of thousands of years,
Right.
honestly, all the way back to caveman days, um but yeah, so yeah, you're gonna run out of money
Money.
before you run out of deals. So like let's maybe
Yeah.
run
No.
with
And
that.
I think early on, we had looked at deals and we're like, oh man, with a similar mentality. We're like, oh, if I just bought that house that was $15,000 and then now it's worth 400, and that's a true scenario.
Yeah,
Or that house for
I've
100,
I've been there.
yeah, that house for 125 and now it's worth 550. Like those have all kind of been presented to me, and you kind of get a little bit of a rut, and so it's very interesting that we're even doing this because just yesterday I had a guy that's kind of been bugging me a little bit about, hey, how do you flip houses or how do you do this? And we had already met once, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months ago, something like that. And I get these guys come out of the woodwork, like, hey, oh my gosh, can you tell me how to do this? And I tell them the same thing every time. You're like, you're going to hear what I have to say and you're going to go back home and you're not going to do anything about it because nobody ever has. There's only been one guy. He was 20-year-old guy. He's a teller at a bank. I hadn't seen him in about a year. And I talked to him and he said, "Yeah, I bought a house, man." And I was like, "Awesome." But the very first thing, this guy's bugging me.
Yeah, yeah. How do I get into real estate? Buy a house.
Yeah.
Well, then, but how do I? No, buy a house, and then
No.
you'll fucking figure it out.
Yeah,
Is
just
what'll
buy a house,
happen.
go buy a house.
Then you're gonna be sitting on a house going, I gotta pay for this shit. Fuck, I gotta figure this
You're
shit
right.
out,
That's
right?
exactly right. He's a 20-year-old kid.
I mean,
Just went and bought one,
yeah,
and did it. And so so this guy had already sat with him, and so I was a little bit annoyed that he was kind of calling me again with 6 months later with not having a house. But he just said, "Hey, how do I get a house?" Not annoyed. I was just like, the way he had approached me was like, "Hey, can you help me get a house?" He didn't even say, "Can you?" He was like, it was like, "Help me get a house," or "I'm really looking for a house. Will you help me get one?" Or something like that. And it wasn't even like, "Hey, can you teach me how to do this?" or "What's your process for this?" And but the very first thing when we sat down, because I finally was like, I got to sit down with this guy. Very first thing I wrote down was, you're going to run out of money before you run out of deals. And I was like, so you just got to remember that, hey, there's deals that they're going to pass you by. You just got to keep on going. And then once you kind of get that mentality, then you start to look for the dilapidated house. Then you do research on the dilapidated house, and that
yeah,
research helps you kind of attack the problem.
yeah. And so if you put in an offer and that offer doesn't go through, and you know what? Like I think a lot of people get emotionally attached. And I say emotionally attached. I don't know really what it is. I feel like people get invested in ideas, and this isn't necessarily
Right.
just houses, right? Like people get invested in ideas, and they feel like they've put time and
Right.
effort. Even if they put no money, they feel like they
Mm-hmm.
put time and effort into this, and they want it to succeed. Because if this idea doesn't succeed, then it's like they are experiencing failure.
Right.
So. I don't know. I mean, how do you deal? Like, what's your approach on that, right? Like, if there's a house you want and you go after it and you don't get it, like, put us inside your head. Like, what is it? Just kind of
You know, I'm kind of a different um, breed of person, I think, in general. Like I'm like I always tell people, like, I grew up like willing to talk to a stick, and I can just, in the sense that I will, um, I love people, I love conversation, but what that I used to think that meant that I loved building these relationships, like, cultivating, like, people will call it a farmer, right? Like someone that likes to build and grow relationships, right? But for me, am I good?
yeah. You're good.
Okay. Um, for me, it was as I've.
No, sorry. Actually, your mic was sounding better than mine, so I was like looking at your mic position and going, I need to match that because his sounds good and I'm all poppy and over here. So
But I think I don't get as emotionally attached to things like that. A lot of it is because, again, going back to Papa, I call him Papa, my great grandfather in law. Um, you know, he told me one time, you don't. There's only one thing you marry in life, and that's your wife. He's like, don't marry a house. He's like, don't marry a project, or don't invest your heart in it. You know,
yeah,
and it's hard because sometimes you'll get deep into a deal. I think where it hurts more is not like, it's never like, oh man, I worked so hard on that deal. As it's happened where you work really hard on a deal, you get the paperwork in hand, you're ready to like kind of close the deal out, and they back out for whatever reason. I mean, we have a guy that has, two times pull basically just pulled the deal out from under us when he's like, "Hey, we're ready. Send it to me." And we send it to him, and then he just pulls it out. And those were the last times I remember feeling most emotionally invested, because we wanted that property for ourselves.
yeah.
And so, like,
You wanted to make a home out of it.
try to make a home out of it. But now where it hurts is when I think about the money. So, like, I'm like, dang it, that's a deal that I missed out on. Or or where it's a mistake. Like it's a mistake that's, something I did that caused the issue, as
Yeah,
opposed to the
yeah,
deal, um, just, I don't know, cold feet or whatever. I have a great example of a deal that we had. This guy had wanted into the business. He was trying to learn, and he said, "Hey, I know somebody. Will you kind of teach me the ropes? But I'll bring you these two deals." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." I kind of took it with a grain of salt. Well, sure enough, he brings me these prime two 16-unit apartment complexes in a neighborhood called Lakewood. It's just a really nice kind of area. It's been established for 30, 40 years, and the houses are. It's just a nice area. And a 16-unit apartment complex in that area probably would sell for $500,000, and the guy wanted 250 a piece. And we kind of ran all these numbers, and I was like, "Yes, this looks amazing." I mean, we were just set up for gold. And we get to closing, and my lender had failed to mention that we would need there was like some sort of like discrepancy in the amount of money that we need to put down, and it was $20,000. And and I was like, well, where, in that moment, I made it like I made a mountain out of a molehill, because I was like, well, that's not what was said, and out of principle and out of this and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And then in hindsight, I was like, oh, you idiot! Like, why didn't you just go borrow 20 grand, and you're gonna make $480,000 off the
Yeah.
off the deal? Like
Yeah.
but you just get so caught up in the justness of it.
Yeah, so I mean, I feel like I experience that sometimes too, where I feel like I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. Like I feel like I need to like there's sometimes I know that there's a battle I should just lose if I want to win the war,
Right.
and for whatever let's expand this analogy. The wartime scenario analogy. You're in this battle and you're just getting your ass beat. You're losing soldiers left and right, and the proper thing to do is retreat so that you can, end up winning the war. And for some reason, you just can't let this one little battle go. And so I don't know. I guess it sounds like. I mean, so was that your lesson? You sat there and you said, I cried over 20 grand in when I in so I gave I wouldn't give up 20 grand to get
Right.
$480,000, and that was like enough lesson for you. That was
Yeah. Yeah.
you didn't need additional
No.
instruction after that.
No, no, definitely not. And I mean and I think the thing is, it's not like you're not gonna have regrets. Like that's just who we are. Like we're gonna have regrets. Like that girl you should have kissed, or that hand you should have held, and mostly it's love kind of analogies, but there's gonna be regrets in life. I think it's just being able to say, okay, who cares? Like everybody has regrets. There's not a person in this world that doesn't have regret, barring maybe Jesus himself. Um, but I mean, yeah. So it's just one of the things you gotta learn to realize that they happen. Regrets happen. Um, and so what goes on in my mind, kind of in those moments, is well, is what it is. I'm not a huge fan of that statement because I think it trivializes a lot of stuff, but you just can't sulk. I mean, you gotta keep on moving.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier there was a couple guys you talked to. One ended up buying a house. One ended up not buying a house. Um, so yeah, and I think and I fall prey to this too a lot. Is that when I want to go do something, I want to learn all the nuts and the bolts. I want to
Mm-hmm.
learn the technical. And what I found is that's entertainment to me, right? Like this podcast, like the
Mm-hmm.
microphones and the cables and like I enjoy that part of it. But at the end of the day, if all you have is a point and shoot camera, and you're sitting wherever you're sitting, and the more important thing is to get it done,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a expression out there somewhere. Don't what is it about? Don't perfection and
I don't know.
completeness. I forget what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like some people will end up giving up because they couldn't achieve perfection,
Right.
which like just getting it done is the first step,
Right.
right? Like if it's never completed, it's by definition impossible to be
Right.
perfect, right? So um
This is a great point. I'm going to interrupt because
yeah, yeah, no,
as
I'm just
no,
trying
it's
to
good.
like
As soon
I'm
as you
trying to
said
talk for a while so
no,
you
no, I
can
get
get
it.
some ideas going.
As soon as you said this, it's so funny. So yesterday we're sitting around with the kids, and we've had like a full day of kind of summer activities. It's summertime, so you're just like trying to fill the hours. And we get to the end of the day, and it's late. It's bedtime. But the kids, Luke, who's my 6-year-old, I have a 6-year-old Luke and a 3-year-old Samuel. Luke says to me, "Hey, Dad, do you remember that guy you were telling me about? You know, the guy that like he killed crocodiles." And I was like, "No, no, no. You're talking about the crocodile hunter. Like he didn't kill crocodiles. He like jumped on top of him and like would wrestle him and grab him, and like he was like a, he would take him and like help him, right?" And he's like, "Can we watch a show about him?" I was like, "Okay." So we searched Netflix. I couldn't get it to work, and so just YouTube, good old YouTube, and went on there, and the very first video he showed, he said, "Now this is back. I'm not even going to try the Australian accent, but the thing with the crocodile hunters, he was so animated, and he
Yeah.
loved what he did and it came across in everything, like in everything that he did, it was just animated, and it was just who he was because he had a passion for what he did." And he said, "This is the first time I'd ever filmed. It was in the mid 80s, and it's a terrible camera." He was like, "But it's the best we had, and it's probably the best Australia had at the time."
Yeah.
And he was
Yeah.
like, "And so all I did was I just knew I had to take it on this boat trip with us." You know? And so the first like 10-minute clip is this grainy video of the crocodile hunter doing what the crocodile hunter is. And I love that video just as much as I love the ones where they showed the crane coming over the water. I mean, every single one, it was just the same exact video, but all he did was just grab this rinky-dink camera and take it on a, what do you call
Well,
it?
it was probably really big, like
Yeah,
VHS.
probably.
Remember those things you
Yeah,
used to have to set it on your
yeah,
shoulder?
yeah.
You remember that?
And it was so
Oh,
old.
hey, you're fine, man. You're fine. We're just hey, we're in a public space here, so we got some people walking through.
So it fits in perfectly with what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not another perfect scenario to say, hey, that just do what you love, and then find out how to tell other people
Yeah.
that what you're doing is what you love, and then that catches on, right? I mean, like it becomes part of who you are, and then people know. And so that's what started to happen. I mean, I ain't no crocodile hunter, and I don't have an HGTV show, but what happens is I've found passion.
I don't think he was on HGTV.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, I don't have an
Oh, okay.
HGTV.
Yeah, yeah. Because you're in
Yeah,
the
yeah, because
home.
I'm in
Okay.
home. I'm in home. So, but what has happened is I've found passion in certain aspects of my job, like that I love, um, and I tell people about it. Hey, what do you do for a living? And they see that I get excited or that I like that, and now like people are like, hey, can you take my number? I'd love to ask you about this. And what ends up happening is usually they don't, but in those interactions, I take the opportunity to say, well, yeah, if you ever know of a piece of land that someone's selling, I'd love to know about it, or a piece of property or whatever. And inevitably, they're like, oh, yeah, actually, there's Joe that
That's like
lives.
some Glengarry Glen Ross shit right there,
I
man.
don't, I don't know. I'm not doing it.
Do you know Glengarry? Do you know the ABC Always Be Closing?
No, no, I don't
No.
know that.
Okay.
No.
Well, you need to watch this clip. It's like Jack Lemmon and Alec Baldwin, and they're selling this bullshit real estate, over the phone, and Alec Baldwin comes in to give him a pep talk, and he's like, he's like the knowledge from downtown. He's the bigwig manager, and he comes in and gives him this pep. But anyways, it's a
Yeah,
classic scene. So ABC,
ABC,
always be
be
closing.
closing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of it, when I think about making money, I think about it in the sense of like, I would like to eat tomorrow. Like, I want to eat. Like, and that's almost like that's kind of like a depression type mentality. But I grew up in a way that was like, we lived kind of paycheck to paycheck in the
Yeah.
family. And so for me, it was about like, hey, we don't like, not that I was ever worried. I mean, like, I never missed a meal, and I was healthier than most kids out there. Um, but my mom, I saw her frantically working, right? Like all the time. Like I got to keep busy. I've got to do this. I've got to do that, because if I don't, then something might happen. And maybe back then I didn't put it together, but now I know it was because she was literally trying to feed a family, literally trying to put clothes on our backs. Um, and so you see some of that stuff, and it's just this mentality where I'm like, yeah, we're kind of getting ahead, and it's like the more ahead I get, the more, um, the more I think about um, how to be more efficient. Like, so if I'm like this next house, I'm like, okay, well, this next house should be able to, it's going to be expendable income in the sense that I'll be able to put it back into the business for the first time.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if there's a technical term for that, but it's just going to be income that I'm going to be able to just carry into the business as opposed to,
Retained earnings
yeah, oh, okay, sure, yeah,
without a distribution.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know what the generally accepted accounting
yeah. I
principle
don't know.
terminology
But
for that is.
the point is, I have some money that I could put back into the business, and I'm like, okay, how can I be efficient now? How can I start to grow this that's now in the business and start to kind of expand that? And it's all because I perceive, you know, I just I think about two things. I think about if the market goes sour for whatever reason, um, and I used to say that it was, oh, if Kim Jong decides to
Yeah.
drop a bomb on us, but now that's all.
But yeah, that's
all,
over.
that's over.
Solved.
That's solved.
We can
It's like,
all sleep at
sleep
night.
at night. But even if that had happened, it's not just me that it would have been screwed over. It'd have been everybody. I would have been
Hey,
okay.
what do you think the chances of me getting that guy on this podcast are?
I don't think. I think you have a better chance of getting Dennis Rodman on the.
Dennis Rodman?
Yeah, I think we should shoot for that. That would be
Dennis
awesome.
Rodman?
I bet we could get him to Dallas.
All
How
right.
could we'd have to like say that we're gonna have a meet with Cuban or something, and just totally lie to get him here.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll think of something to get done. That I actually Dennis Rodman. I don't know if I'd want to necessarily interview him, but I definitely would not mind just spending an evening with a guy.
I just don't know if there's any truth in anything that he says.
No,
Like,
okay.
does he
So
really believe what he believes?
I think so, man. God, I'm trying to think of who. There was somebody that was telling this story about him. I mean, somebody famous, and that was pretty good friends with him, but hadn't seen him in a while. God, I'm trying to think of who this was. Um, but ran into him in New York and saw him at a restaurant and was like, "Hey, man, what's going on? I haven't seen you in forever." And they ended up, hanging out, partying. He's like, "Man, I love you, man. Like, I haven't seen you forever, whatever." And then like he disappears, and they're like, "Oh, what happened to Dennis Rodman?" And they're like, "Oh, this is just kind of his MO. Like, he's kind of weird. He just kind of disappears." So then the next day they're turning on the TV, and this is when he went to Korea, and they're like, "Oh, I found Dennis Rodman. He went to fucking Korea." Right? God, who was this? This was some podcast I listened to, but it was great. So this
Oh man.
man, this guy, he was talking about when he was like, like when I think it was when the Bulls were in the championship, and Dennis Rodman was like, "Hey, let's go party in Vegas." And so they were like, this is like during the championship. They'd like he'd like play basketball, they'd win a game, they'd fly to Vegas, and like just, I mean,
Yeah.
party, like drugs, alcohol,
Right.
hookers. Well, I mean, whatever.
Whatever.
Come back, play some more basketball. Go back, like play some more. I mean, like just and he was in who was Phil Jackson was the
Mhm.
coach at the time, and apparently Phil Jackson was like, God, who? This is a terrible story because I can't remember who this was, but anyways,
No, it's great. I mean, it still makes sense.
yeah, but
The story is good without the person who told it.
yeah, I mean Dennis Rodman's a character, man.
Yeah, no, he's crazy. But how
Love to
did
get
we come?
inside his head.
No, yeah. What were we talking about? I don't
Okay,
even know.
so kind of I feel like we just kind of jumped in, we jumped around. Let's kind of back up and maybe give a little bit of framework
Mm-hmm.
to this particular business. So
Mm-hmm.
once again, like if I was coming to you and I said, "Hey, I want to get into this business," you know, whatever. I've got 5 minutes. explain to me how I'm successful in, flipping houses.
Right.
Go.
Um, 5 minutes go for a guy like me. That's
Well,
difficult. No,
okay,
I'm gonna try.
okay,
I'll try.
okay.
No, look, let's do
So
it.
we
Let's do it.
started. We started about kind of like acquiring the right property, right? Like you wanna. It sounds like within a
No, no.
neighborhood, you need to acquire a property
I'll
that's
tell you. I
lower
got
than
it.
its
I got it. It's
peers.
easy. Here we go.
Okay,
Here
okay,
we go.
okay.
I tell everybody the same thing. Like if they're asking me like really like quickly, what do I do? On your drive home
Buy
today.
it, fix it up, sell
Yeah,
it.
on your drive home.
3 easy steps.
Buy my DVD. It's online right now.
There, there's just be Isaacs in there and go. Step 1, buy it. Step 2, fix it up. Step
Step
3,
three, sell
sell it.
it. No, I tell everybody the same thing. It's so dumb, but I'm like, it's not that hard. It's just a matter of risk tolerance. On your drive home, don't drive home the same way you drive home every day. Instead, when you exit the highway, cut through the neighborhoods that you never cut through, right? And just drive. When you see a yard that looks overgrown and it's like, but it's not just overgrown, it's like messed up, like there's bushes everywhere. And then you look at, the roof and it's caving in and just you have a phone, just mark it down on your phone on Google Maps, drop a pin, save it, keep on driving. And on your way home, and taking an extra 5 minutes because you're braking a little bit,
Hmm.
on an extra 5 minutes, you can identify 5 houses that are potential
So
houses.
this I was having a conversation with a guy the other day. He's actually reached out to us because he's looking at opening a brewery in the same neighborhood
Hmm.
um, that we're building our brewery
Yeah.
in, and he was asking about. I said, I asked him. I said, "Are you looking at any other properties in the neighborhood?" And there's some zoning concerns that are difficult. And I said, well, actually, man, if you just go right across the street, there's no zoning concerns. He's like, well, there's nothing for lease over there. I was like, well, there's plenty of great properties. He's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but there's nothing for lease.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, like,
Yeah.
quit buying off the market.
Yeah.
And I think that's like one thing that I try to get through to people is there are no rules, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously, like you don't want to hurt somebody. You don't want to break the law to the point that you go to jail. And I said that very specifically because a lot of laws are really, really stupid. And if you can get away with breaking laws and not hurting people, you should absolutely do it.
I don't know if I agree with that, but
Why not? Okay.
no, I hear
Okay.
you.
So if I go do an action that hurts no one but breaks the law, explain to me why I shouldn't do it.
That I think it's arrogant to think that you hurt nobody.
Okay, so you're judging my perception. That's not what I asked you to do. I said if I can go do an action that hurts no one. So this is a hypothetical situation. If I can go do an action that hurts no one, however it is illegal, what is the moral or ethical, not the legal, the moral or ethical justification for why I shouldn't do it?
So I'd say that if you espouse to a certain moral standard, that I think that if you start to take in areas that seem innocent or are innocent but are still illegal, I think those could grow.
Okay.
I think they can
Let's
grow.
flip that. Let's flip that. I am a 36-year-old male.
Hmm.
I can legally have sex with an 18-year-old female.
Okay.
Does that make it morally right? So are we using the law to judge morals?
Does it make it morally right? I mean, if you're
So
talking,
so you based on your previous statement,
mm,
moral like the law is the indicator of morality or or ethics. However, let's just stick
okay,
with morality. You said, well, because it's not legal, then it's not moral. I'm saying, okay, there's plenty of legal things I can do. I can go, like I said, I'm a 36-year-old male. I'm married. I have a
hmm,
child. I have a family.
hmm,
I can go legally have sex with an 18-year-old that is mentally 18 years old.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you think that because it's legal that it would be morally okay.
No, I think there are things that are legal and not illegal personally that um,
So does the reverse hold true? So are there things that are illegal that are still moral? So moral and legal are not equivalent, is what you're saying.
oh, yeah,
Okay.
I'd
So if
say
moral and legal
well,
are not
but
equivalent,
not in I'd say that 9 times out of 10 or 8
no,
times out of 10.
we're not talking percentages. We're just saying are
Well,
moral and legal equivalent? If they're not, then there are some cases where things are illegal but still moral. Is that correct?
right.
If there are some cases where things are illegal but immoral.
Illegal but still moral. Illegal. Okay, give me an example of illegal but still moral.
Okay, something that's illegal but still moral. I mean, I think it's hard to give an example because it's just everything. I
Hmm.
mean, you know what I mean? Like,
So
I mean, like when you were 20 years old, like and like you went and drank a glass of wine, that was illegal. But like, was that like you had one glass of wine? You didn't drive anywhere. You
mm,
didn't, you know, I mean, you maybe some member of the service who's risking their is 18 years old, risking their lives, getting shot at, but they can't legally consume alcohol. Like what, like some of these things,
yeah.
right?
No, okay. So I'm not going
So
to say
so
that
so let's back it up.
there's
Let's
not a
back it up.
clear line there.
We're getting
Yeah, we're way off in left field.
we're way on left of field, and so what I guess my thing is to say like throw what you think is the rule book out the fucking
Yeah,
window.
I agree.
And if it doesn't go to jail, if it doesn't send you, and even if you know what, even if you're gonna get fined, but it's worth it. Like I'm serious. Like you got to look at everything this way.
Yeah,
You got to
so
look at everything as like, hey,
I'm
I
going
got
to
an
say the same
opportunity.
thing
Okay,
in a different way.
yeah, go for it.
Um, I think that there's a lot of things that happen um, where you kind of think that I just said think a lot of times. There's a lot of things that happen in life that make you believe you must act in this way because it will A will equal B, right? And the reality is like, yeah, you're telling me that like to get from A to B, it's got to be in a pink Cadillac. But what I'm telling you is that I could also get there in a Pinto, right? And so when we're talking about throwing kind of like the rule book out the window, yeah, to make the money, like if we're talking about just brass tacks here, we're talking about making money, right? Like I'm in the business that I'm at, I'm working at all to make money. I'm doing any kind of business so that I
Yeah,
can
and I mean
sustain
I
life.
think I think you could abstract it even more into just achieving a goal,
Right.
right?
I'm achieving a goal.
Achieving a goal.
But the point is, it doesn't have to, like, I think that, again, we're saying very similar things in the sense that uh, forever and ever, people have been like, well, you buy a house, you got to find a realtor, right? And then your realtor, you're going to give him like a set of like, this is what I want to spend. This is my high point. This is my, like, I think this kind of, it's not really low, but, I probably don't want to go lower than this because those properties might be terrible or unfixable or whatever. And then can you help me out? And so when we're talking about like riding that train from point A to point B, then I'm saying absolutely you throw that out the window and you say no. I mean heck, like let's let's take a boat across instead
Yeah.
and let's stop on the island of hey, I'll give you an example. Like none of my deals are straightforward. Like I was at a neighborhood walk. I stopped and saw I saw a house that was dilapidated, old, and I said, well, let's just go knock on the door. And my little boys were with me. I knocked on the door. This old lady answers the door, sweet as anything. Elizabeth Piscina.
Keep talking.
Okay, and I'm telling the story to nobody. Okay, so Elizabeth Piscina was there, and I said, "Hey, I love your house, and just wondering if you ever thought about selling it." And she said, "No, hey, thank you so much, but I'm gonna die here. I love this place. I will never sell this house." And I said, "Well, hey, that's a shame, but I do love it. I'd love to have it, and if you're ever thinking about it, like just let me know. And do you mind me bugging you about it? I'll just swing by every blue moon and talk to you about it." And in fact, I said, I think I asked her for her phone number. I said, can I get your number and I'll just give you a call every blue moon? She said, no, no, I'm not selling it. I'm telling you. And she was like, but thank you so much. And I was like, well, if you ever need anything, just, let me know. I live around the block. Fast forward 1 year, I'm walking and she's outside tinkering with her brand new car. Something's wrong with it. The hood's up, but it's a brand new car, like brand new. And so it's the battery. Like that's just the most logical conclusion. I'm like, the car doesn't start. It's a brand new car. She left her lights on or something. And
Yeah.
so I said, hey, you need a jump? And she said, yeah. And so I went and got my cables or my car, my cables came back and it looks good.
Yeah. This is
What is that?
this is not a Manhattan Project beer.
Oh, it's not.
No.
I'd like to know why it's in that can.
Well, as you can see, this is a very generic can. This just happens to be what beer cans look like naked.
So I came back a year later and she says, Isaac, I'm losing the house. I was like, oh, what? And so then fast forward 30 days and I bought her house from her. We got an extension from the bank. But even from that point to the end, I had to deal with like four different family members that had like a right to the property, but had given it over to her. And truly, they just had never done like it was like, here, sign this sticky note telling me that you're going to sign this over to me. Okay, here it is. So we
So
went through and did it.
so I think another obstacle that
Look
or
at the difference
obstacle.
in these.
Yeah. Well, I mean they're very very different beers, but um I okay, so I feel like and this is just I'm talking about from personal experience. I'm not like being it can kind of sound like we're being judgy, like, oh, those people that don't own a business act this way. But like it was the things that we learned along the way.
Yeah.
And I feel like one thing is that you have this vision of what other people like when like if someone had told you like, hey, you're gonna be like a real estate developer, like you had this vision of these real estate developers, like they drove like these like $80,000 Yukons and had
Mm-hmm.
like weird shoes and shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you just have this like there's some sort of celebrity or there's some sort of professional athlete, like they're in
Mm-hmm.
this different realm. And then when you get into it, when you're on the inside, like you look around to your what you would consider your peers, and you're like, these people are just normal ass people.
Yeah.
And if anything, they're like below the average of what I'm used to working with, like in the corporate world,
Right.
right?
Well, yeah,
Like
because I
some of
mean,
them just couldn't even hack it in the
let's
corporate world.
sidebar for a second on
Okay.
what the corporate world is. The education system has built us to be worker bees
Yeah.
and to be ants and to work in a line and to yes sir just over and over, right? And so if you want to excel in that and that's what your little heart like pitter patters after, go for it. I know some people that love it. I know some people that are like, I'm the best CP in the world. I love just staring at Excel spreadsheets all day long. Shoot, like freaking have at it, right? I know people that have, you know, given up better roles in front of people to work in kind of like the packaging section of their coffee shop because they're like, I don't really like people that much. I'd rather just pour beans into a bag endlessly because that's just what I'd rather do and I'm good at it. And I'm like, okay, you go for it. That's not who I am. But if the education system has basically created, mini robots to an extent, and the best robot wins first place, and they get to be valedictorian, and they go on and they get to be, go on to the whatever college or university that teaches them how to be a good robot in whatever field that they've
Well,
chosen. And
so this reminds me. There's a book, and of course I can't remember the name of the book, but but it basically talks about how Harvard is, and like it talks about how well any good any like well known respected college is actually not that good at educating people. right? That it's actually just at some point they achieve this elite status, and somehow, somehow they achieved it. Doesn't matter how, like, let's forget how they achieved it. But they achieved it, and then they just maintained it. And basically, if you can get your acceptance criteria, if you can get the people that are applying for this college, you can get this wide enough, smart enough pool where, like Harvard doesn't accept you if you get less than like a 1500 on your SAT, right?
Yeah.
So if all of your students score above 1500 on your SAT, you know what's going to happen after they graduate? They're going to be really fucking successful, right?
Yeah.
And then people are like, look at all these Harvard graduates, they're really successful. And it's like, yeah, they all scored 1550 plus on their SAT when they were 17.
Right.
Like, what did you expect in
Yeah.
life out of them?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that like these elite universities are actually more of a selection criteria. And so one of the good arguments people say, you like, because when I first heard this, I kind of doubted it, and I was kind of processing it. And then they said, okay, well, if Harvard is so good at educating people, why haven't they expanded their enrollment? Why don't they have 100,000 students? If they figured it out, if they figured out how to take,
Mm-hmm.
a bag of flesh and turn it into an ultimate human being, why aren't they doing it for the whole planet? Because they don't know how to do it, because you can't do it,
Right.
because humans are humans, human nature is human nature, and like people coming in. So, anyways, I don't even know where I was going with this, but this whole kind of like
Yeah.
interesting selection criteria concept, and I think one of the things is just kind of comes back to this whole mysticism. There is no mysticism, right? Yes, there are a few people in this world that are physics PhDs that like theorize. They're the Einstein types,
Mm-hmm.
right? That and those people, you know what? Yeah, they're way out of your fucking pay scale. Like they blow you away. But for the most part, like the world is not that special,
Yeah.
right? And so that's kind of like I said, and I think it's intimidating. Like if you've never done a commercial real estate deal, especially like because well, I say any real estate deal, but on the commercial side, not a lot of people like a lot of people own a house during their lifetime.
Right.
Not a lot of people own commercial real estate, and so
But even that, you're saying they own a house. The person that bought it for them, 9 times out of 10, was a realtor. A
right.
realtor coached them into the house, showed them what the house was like, and sold them on the house. Right? They used their skill to do that. And I'm not knocking that. I mean, it's just is what it is. Um, but I know that it
Okay,
didn't. You
so
didn't learn anything from that process.
yeah, and that's what I'm getting at. Like I'm saying that once again, back up. There are no rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're like sitting there trying to like close a deal, and the guy says, "Well, I'll sign the deal if you armor all my tires." You know what? Go fucking armor all the
Yeah,
guy's
go
tires.
armor all the
There
tires.
isn't there
Yeah,
there are no
you
rules.
go armor all the tires.
You can't like look it up in the Uniform Commercial Code and go, is it legal to request a tire armor all?
Right,
Yes, it is.
right.
You can do anything you want for the most part.
Yeah,
So, I'd say like, yeah, I feel like that would be my first piece of advice, and I've told this to a couple of people, and actually I feel like I've had some feedback from a couple people that have come back to me and said, you know what, dude, you were pretty inspirational or not inspirational, motivational, or you were a linchpin or like something.
mm-hmm.
You were influential in
Yep.
in me doing this thing, and I'm like, oh well, what was that I said? They were like, you told me just fucking do it.
Yeah,
Like, cause I was like talking about like, well, should I do it like A or like B? I'm like, you should just fucking do it.
yeah. Just
Like
do it.
A, B, C, D, E, F. Just go. Like,
Mm-hmm.
spend as little money as possible, as little resources as possible, and just get it going. And then you'll figure out from there. Like, you'll figure out where the things are. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying don't plan ahead. Like, do those things, but yeah. I mean,
Yeah, you've
you
got
got
to
to get going, man.
you got to figure out your willingness to um, uh, take a risk. So just your risk tolerance. You've got to figure out where that is, and then once you know where that is, like push it to be to the nth degree. In other words, like, hey, my risk tolerance is here. Oh man, this deal's like right above that.
Well,
Right? Like this deal's like
okay.
just past that point where my risk tolerance is. and you're just like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And I'll tell you that I've never once been let down. Like I've just it's always been like, oh man, I'm glad I did that. Like I'm glad that I kind of pushed myself past where I thought I was like, um, happy with. Because like my dream scenario in the real estate world is 33, 33, 33, or just basically
Thirds.
thirds. If I can
Like
buy,
photography.
yeah,
The
I don't
rule
know
of
what that
thirds.
means. Um,
You know the rule of thirds in
no, I don't. But
photography?
let's talk about that later.
Okay.
So I think of a house.
You ever seen the little tic-tac-toe screen that comes up on the camera?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so you're supposed to align this, like the thing
Oh,
of interest, like,
I like how you ignored what I was saying and just kept on. I know
yeah, yeah,
exactly what
yeah,
you're saying.
yeah. So, anyways, that's the rule of
Okay,
thirds.
I got it.
But maybe it's just maybe it's like, like that movie Pi. Like there's some number that's the
No,
rule of thirds.
I totally believe that there
The
is.
real, so this is Isaac's real estate rule of thirds. Go.
So Isaac's real estate rule of thirds. If I look at a neighborhood and I know that I can sell a house for 300,000, like I just pull up Zillow or
Yeah,
some
X
sort of
square feet, X
whatever.
quality.
It's
Yep,
just
boom.
$300,000 for 100,000 for a couple of thousand square feet, whatever. I mean, I just know that all the houses are about the same size. They're all selling for $300,000, and I could purchase and fix it up for ideally purchase for 100,000 and throw in another. So that's my first third, 100,000,
Hmm.
and then do renovations for another 100,000. That's my second third, and then that last third is all my profit.
Yeah.
Right. So that's just like the golden kind of nugget. Like, hey, if you can get a house like this, it is like gold. Now, has it
It's probably
ever,
more like 42, 44, like 20.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you end up getting something like, you know, yeah, 44, and then you ended up like, maybe even like 40, right? Or 40 and 40, and you're looking at 20, but still, you start to look at that, and I mean, it's just you can get caught up. This is what we were talking about earlier. You can get caught up on that like this kind of golden rule in your brain that you have until someone, a friend usually, will be like, dude, but wait a minute, like you're telling me that you
So
can,
you're gonna say you're gonna make 35 grand in 3 months.
yeah,
Like that's pretty good.
yeah, or you're gonna make 70 grand in 3 months. Yeah, but it's only 15% return. It's like, hey, dude, shut up.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
just get rid of it and make that money. Let's just go do it. Oh, oh yeah, like it is. Oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. There's like you can get caught up in your own,
Yeah.
fluff.
Yeah, so I think okay, so once again, let's kind of get down to the nuts and bolts a little bit away from the philosophical. So obviously, to go do this business, you need to have money. You have to have money to put in down payments to acquire
Hmm.
properties. You need lending, or you need a fat bankroll to be able to pay subcontractors
Hmm.
and things like that. So how do you like what are some things you can talk about as far as how to acquire financing,
Right,
how to get the money to make this shit happen?
right. So I didn't have any money, and in fact, when I first found my first deal, I went to my rich.
This is really starting to sound like an infomercial.
Yeah, I went to my rich uh, buddy, and I was like, "This guy's for sure gonna lend me the money. Like, just I know he is."
Rich guys never lend money
And
because
no,
they're too fucking
no.
smart.
So he said, "Well, I went to him and I'm like fishing. I got this deal, and I probably sounded like it sounded like a crack whore or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
I got this deal. It's the most amazing thing you've ever seen. And he's like sitting there listening to me, and he's he says, "Well, let me introduce you to some people that should be able to help you out." And it was hard money lenders. And
So define hard money
yeah,
lenders.
so a hard money lender is a private, usually like a
So not a
private,
bank.
not a bank. It's usually a private group of individuals, or sometimes even an individual themselves. That
Would these people sometimes be referred to as loan
sharks,
sharks?
yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, and in
So
fact,
is private or hard money lender, is that just a nice way of saying loan shark?
that is a very nice way of saying loan shark,
These
and
are,
that's
but these are like not the type of loan sharks that break your thumbs, or
right.
are they?
Well, no,
Okay.
no, not that I know of, but they're
Apparently, you've always paid back on
yeah, I've
time.
always paid back on time, so too scared not to. You know, you borrow from them, and what they do is they will lend you on two different bases,
Bases?
bases. Two different. They lend in two different ways. First way is an as is. So like, hey, this is the property, and we think it's worth X amount of dollars, $100,000, and we'll lend you up to 70%. So lend you $70,000 um, to purchase the property, and that's it. That's the max we're going to lend you to do anything. So if you buy the property for 30, well now you have $40,000
Okay,
left.
so what's the advantage? Like, because typically I can go to a bank and and a bank will loan me 80% of a property. So why would I go to a hard money lender?
So a couple of things. First of all, banks don't as easily lend on investment properties that way. They're
Okay,
look
because they want to see like your personal cash
yeah, your
flow. Like,
personal
do you have enough
guarantee.
money?
Right. Yeah, they're
The hard
very
money lenders are more like, hey, I'll like do this and I get first lien on it, and if
right.
you foreclose, then I'll just sell it and I'll make my
Yeah,
money
I make
back.
my money back and more.
Okay,
Because they're only lending 70% of a actual um, you know,
like appraisal value.
appraisal value.
Yeah.
And so they're lending a maximum amount on that. And so their exposure is at 70%. And it's always at 70%. And so if you belly up, they just made 30% more on your deal than they would have.
Okay, so
Right.
where's the other?
So the other one is
Okay, and let's step back. So, what type of rate are we looking at? What type of cost?
so the initial cost, like
So,
so
$100,000 property, they'll loan 70 grand. Do I have closing fees? Like, what are my interest rates?
right. So you have closing fees. Generally, you can estimate about. I always estimate 1%. It's never 1%. It's usually like half of a percentage on
Okay,
closing
so
costs.
3,500 bucks
3,500 bucks,
on a
but
100 grand deal.
I always estimate at least yeah, uh, 1% minimum. But um, so
So
they
put 7 G's in the budget, but it's
right,
going to be less.
right. And so depending on if they had a realtor, it doesn't matter because you purchased the property from them and you're not
So
paying
they
for that
paid the
fee. They
fees,
pay
yeah.
that fee. Um, so you've got that fee. You've got a few. If you're using hard money, they draft documents and they charge $450 to draft those documents. You get
Yeah,
an
amortization
yeah,
fees and
you get an appraisal which is $450.
rear end tickling fees.
Yeah, a $450 fee for an appraisal, a $500 fee for like a survey. Usually you
Yeah,
have to have those two
to get
things
title
to
insurance
get title insurance,
and your
um,
title policy.
title policy, all that stuff. So
So, like, are you saying 1% closing costs?
yeah, so I'll no usually 1% on title on the title work. So like if
Okay,
it's
so let's back it up. So you've got like, is there like an actual origination fee with the lender?
yes, so there is an origination fee of my lender is at 4 points, which is really high. Typical in the market right now is 2 to 3. But I've stayed with these people because um, which there's some other reasons you want to stay with people is how much they trust you and how quickly they can move on deals.
Yeah,
So
because I
like
mean, like liquidity, like if you can go to a seller and be like, "Do you want to check this afternoon?
right,
You want to check this afternoon?
right,
If you'll agree to X dollars, I'll get you a check this afternoon."
right.
Like that's a big deal.
Right. If you can move, the faster you can move with that stuff, and the more you know people, like, hey, you're using the same hard money lender that always uses the same title company, and the same closer, then you can call that closer and preeminently say, I've got a deal coming up. I need you to rush it through as fast as possible. You know the appraisal now because he's appraised, 4 of your houses. You call him up and say, hey man, I really need you to rush this through. I know I'll pay the extra, $50, $75 for you to do that.
But you're not supposed to know the appraiser, are you?
Well, that's the crazy thing with hard money.
Oh,
They
it
don't.
doesn't matter
It
because
doesn't
it's
matter.
not
They don't
like
care.
FDIC,
Yeah, it's
none
not
of that shit.
FDIC or anything like that. So they don't care. So it's 4 points up front. So a $100,000 house automatically is 104,
Okay.
104,000, and that's how I think about it. So when I look at a house, if I know that I've already spoken to the seller and they say I want to sell it for $100,000, like in my mind, I'm negotiating at plus 4%, right? All the time.
That's just what it costs to close a loan.
Yeah, that's just what I'm thinking in my brain. So
That's
104,
sunk cost done.
done.
Okay, and so that also does that also mean that you have to come up with 34,000 at close,
No, so depends on how much you buy
or are
it.
you rolling that? You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. Is like
No, you don't have to come up with that.
$100,000 house, you're getting financing on 70, you've got to cover 30. That
But
extra $4,000, do you have to cover that in cash, or is that getting rolled into the loan?
you can roll that into the loan,
Okay,
and so you know it it.
and that's pretty typical with hard money. They'll roll the closing costs into the loan.
I don't know. I think all hard money is a little different, and some people do like hard money guys. Sometimes will do the first deal where it's pretty stiff. They're giving you kind of like hard and fast rules, like we're only going to lend up to 60%, and
They're giving you like the first day in prison treatment.
yeah, and then they're gonna like
I
say,
don't know. I don't know you yet.
and then they're gonna allow a little more freedom after that. Um, you made it really weird for me to say that.
Well, I think it's quite appropriate, like
Yeah.
prison reference for
So,
hard
yeah,
money
no,
lenders.
because then after that they charge you 14% a month. So I started to like
Why don't you just put it on your credit card? Jesus, 14%.
14% straight.
Holy cow! So 14% annual per month. So
So
it
it's
ends up,
annual, yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
one, whatever the math is. But
yeah, but still,
so six
it's
months you're paying 7%. So like let's say you have a 6 month deal. So you're looking at $104, right? 104,000.
mhm.
Getting 70,000.
14. That works out perfect. Or no, call it.
So you're bringing 30 in cash. You're getting 70. Let's say
Well, but
rolling the closing costs
you
in.
may not have to bring the 30 in cash. That's what I was trying to tell you.
Okay, yeah.
Like
How would
most of
you
my
avoid bringing the
well,
30
most
in
of my
cash?
deals, like I'm coming in and I know that so there's two ways again. There's an
Okay, yeah,
as
because
is,
that's what you talk about. You said
there's
as
an
is, but you're
as
gonna do it as
is.
appraised.
So if you do an as appraised value, that means you kind of have you have your ducks more in a row. Like you've seen the house, you have an idea of what you're going to spend on it. You've run some rough estimates, and you know these rough estimates because you've done a couple of bids on maybe other houses, and so you've called you just kind of estimate based on what these other houses were at, and so you kind of run this big budget kind of on, hey, I think it's going to cost me X amount of dollars. Are we still good?
Yeah,
We're doing good.
yeah.
What do you
Don't
mean
get
by what?
distracted by me.
What do you
Okay,
mean by
so
what?
you're just keep going, keep going.
What do I do with my hands? That's never happened in a podcast. Freaking Talladega Nights. So I have never purchased a house where I've had to come down with any money, or put down any money.
Okay, so this once again, this is sounding very fucking infomercial.
Yeah, well,
And
dude. So there's like,
so
I am
if you scroll down, like if you just keep scrolling, keep scrolling, keep scrolling, there'll be like a thing that says 1995. You click on it, you give us your credit card number, and I promise you're gonna be rich.
yeah.
No, okay,
I get it.
how do I even have this conversation without sounding like an infomercial? Isaac, this is insane. So you're telling me that I can buy houses, no money down, and I can be a real estate mogul. Here, time out. After you've had
What is this?
a couple Manhattan Project beers, I, I can't disclose. But
Oh.
taste a non-Manhattan. One of the reasons I can't disclose is because it's completely unfucking labeled, so I have no idea. But secondly, I don't.
You know who it is.
I think I do. I don't. I'm not positive. So if you're, I don't know if this is going to be all video, maybe some audio on this show here, but
Oh.
there's a very disgusted look on Isaac's face
No, I
after
mean
he
it's
drank
just golly. Have you ever had just a shot that makes your lips like pinch up on the back and you can't do anything but it's like uncontrollable pinch, like the I don't even know what you call this part of your mouth, like on the outside of your lips at the bottom on your chin. If you
Mhm.
follow your lips down
Yeah.
to your chin
I
and it
don't know.
just squeezes right there because it tastes so bad, that's what that beer tasted like. It was terrible. It was terrible. I
Well, hey,
mean,
man. Well, here. You know what? Let's open up an Atomic Alliance Pina Colada IPA.
you're right. I do sound like an infomercial. But the truth is, I went to my buddy that was loaded down that first house, and I was like, I don't have any money, but I know this is a good deal. Like, I knew this house. Like, I was like, this house, if it was fixed up, I could sell it for like, at the time, it would have been like $250,000. And I was like, and she offered it to me for 79,000. It was the very first house.
How much you're gonna? So you're okay. Let's round to make the numbers easy. You're buying for 80. You're selling for 250. How much are you renovating? Like
So
just in your
yeah,
budget.
no, at the time I estimated $65,000 in renovations.
So 145.
It ended up being 160 because of all the other costs, interest and whatever.
Yeah,
But I
closing
mean,
fees and
yeah, all that other stuff. It
origination
was like
fees, amortization fees,
164 or something like
rear end tickling fees.
that.
Don't forget
Yes,
the rear end tickling fees.
especially with those hard money lenders.
Hard money lenders. So 160 cost and 250 sell. So you're sitting there going, man, I'm sitting on 90
This is
grand.
a great deal. That's what I thought in my
Great
brain.
deal.
I don't know what to do with it. I had no clue.
Yeah.
All I knew is I
But
knew.
somehow I have to come up with 80 G's to buy it.
Yeah, I've got to figure out how to get this property.
All right.
And so what I did is I went back to the house and I printed. I got on Google and I said forms for purchasing a house. And in Texas, there's the truck forms.
What's TREC?
I don't know what it stands for.
Texas Real Estate
Something, something,
Commission.
something.
TREC?
TREC.
Okay.
And it's a
Probably Texas
truck
Real Estate.
truck 1 to 4 family purchase.
Okay.
And it's what came up, and I just said, okay, I guess this is what I gotta go there. So I went over there and got signatures, like to close the deal for this like amount, like this deal, and I had no money, like nothing.
So you committed to buying the house for $79,000
Right.
without the ability to fulfill that obligation
Right.
to provide $79,000 in US dollars.
Right.
Okay.
That's right. Because I
Was that moral or illegal?
definitely wasn't illegal, and it's not. I mean,
Would that not be fraudulent to obligate yourself to
well, you
pay
can
without
make
the
it
current ability?
contingent. Now I know I didn't do it then, but you could technically make it contingent on financing.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Like you don't run into people that do good things. Like let's take Uber for an example, right? Like Uber is awesome. Like I
Yeah,
hate cabs. I love Uber.
right.
Uber's awesome. You know why? Because they broke the fucking law. Because they said, you know what, we're gonna not be a taxi cab company, but we're gonna do the same thing. And so this is kind of where I get into this moral
Right.
ethical, and I really want to push this to people to
Okay.
go break the rules. Like if you're not gonna, if it's not gonna put you in jail or it's not gonna like cost you tens of thousands of dollars, break the rules,
So
break
I'm
the
cheap.
laws,
So I'm
break the
cheap. So I'm like, I think about it, like if it's gonna cost me more than a couple of $100, I'm not gonna.
yeah, no, whatever. Yeah, no, yeah.
No, so like I just remember
Okay,
I'd
so
learned a lesson from my great grandfather in law. I learned a lot from him, and these old guys have
Papa.
Papa. He has a lot to say, and he had told me always give yourself a long time to close. He was like, as long as you can, and
I'm
so
this is like so bad about. I'm like, we can do this thing in like 13 days.
and so
I'm
and
so fucking bad about
so
that.
that first deal, I think I did something like 120 days to close or something.
Wait, like in your close
Yeah,
period?
like my closing period was 120 days.
Which okay, we need to put a little side note to talk about real estate contracts, but keep
Yeah.
going.
So I put 120 days in there, and then I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna go talk to my buddy now. He's gonna lend me all this money, and I'm gonna make a ton, and I'll give him some of it too, and then he'll finally accept me as one of his own, and I'll become rich next year with him together. That's literally the thought that went through my brain. I mean, not if I'm dumbing it down, probably pretty close to that. But I go to him and he just said, "No, let me just tell you how to do it. Like you don't need to. If the deal's that good,
If there's that much profit, that can
there's
be
that.
your down payment.
Yeah, that's
The profit is your
the
down
profit
payment.
is your down payment.
Okay, so let's like so for people
And
that
so
are watching,
that's
listening, let's like kind of back up, right?
right,
So I'm gonna kind of explain it. You tell me if I'm right or wrong.
right.
Okay, so let's say I'm buying a house for 100,000,
Right.
and I can, because this is a number we used earlier, and like I think it needs 100,000 renovation, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I can sell it for 300,000.
Mm-hmm.
So the appraised value is 300,000.
Right.
All I need is 100,000 to buy it and 100,000 to renovate it. That's 67%, 2/3.
Right.
So my down payment is the profit.
Right.
So that's what you're talking about.
Right. That's exactly
So
right.
this is like when you watch this is the infomercial part of the segment.
This is where it ends.
Basically, your profit becomes the down payment.
Right. Right. And they'll do that deal all day long because they use their appraiser.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not like I brought
yeah.
Joe
And once
Schmo.
again, it's hard money lender, so like their appraiser is like their buddy. It's like
Right.
Bob, and like
Yeah.
Bob's gonna shoot him straight.
Yeah.
Bob's gonna be like, "Don't get in this fucking deal.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
bad
true.
deal."
Yeah.
Like it's not like
I want to
this.
say his name's Joe, so it's
Yeah,
pretty close
Bob,
to Bob.
Joe, whatever. But yeah, because like when you're looking at the more like traditional route, it's like some third party, anonymous. Like you can't know them, they can't know you. The bank has like it's this
Oh,
really weird.
I got to stop you.
Yeah.
Dear Lord, that's amazing.
All right. So we got to take a little break.
That.
I don't actually have any. We're not really doing an ad, but let's just go ahead and
Look at this
throw
grain.
some
Look at
free-
that grainy
the
symbol.
grainy. This is a sample can.
Can I put that?
Yeah. Sure,
Here we
go
Look at
for it.
this- Look at this grainy symbol.
Yeah, because that is what is called a sample can. This can is to provide samples to people. This is not a commercially available can, but let's do a little. But like this is a practice podcast. Let's practice my advertising. This here, I don't even know if I can. I gotta get the microphone over here. This podcast is brought to you by Isaac Drinking Atomic Alliance. Pina Colada IPA.
So I mean,
It's
your first,
fantastic.
your first thought about Pina Colada IPA is you're like, whoa, that sounds disgusting. Like,
That was actually my first
no,
thought.
I mean, I think
When we decided to make this beer,
the regular Joe that's out there like drinking like I don't know, Lone Star or Budweiser or Bud Light or whatever, he's gonna be like Pina Pina Colada IPA, like.
well, it's definitely going to challenge his manhood. That's for
Right?
sure.
It's like, but this is just like, you know, I honestly, the first thing I think about is my honeymoon. I'm not
Do I
gonna-
want to hear this?
No,
story?
yeah, you do.
Okay.
Let me
I mean,
s-
this is like a rated R, not NC-17.
So, just being at that resort pool where you just drink stuff that you're like, this is the best thing I've had in my entire life. Because they know how to
Because
make
it's
that.
so good when it's free.
Well, they know. Well, and they know how to
It's
make.
all inclusive.
They know how to make those 10 drinks really well, right?
Like the
And-
pina colada, the
Yeah, like,
margarita.
and you're
yeah.
just there, and it's just perfect. And so, this is what that reminds me of.
Pina colada.
Roatan, Honduras, most beautiful beaches in the world.
Okay. All right.
Back to it.
Commercial segment over.
Yep.
We are back.
By the way, go to Roatan and not Fiji. I want to say that.
So basically, what you're saying, the hard money lender will lend you 70% of appraised value, or does that number go down? Does it go down to 60%,
No,
65?
it's everybody's different. Every single one of them's different. But for the most part, I'm at 70%. So I'll be able to get 70% of my.
So if you walk in, you say, "Hey, I got this house. I'm gonna sell it for 300,000. This is why."
Right.
And you provide them square footage, comps, whatever discussion you have to have with them. They say, "Okay, well, it's 300,000 appraised value with our appraiser or whatever. We'll lend you up to 70% of that, so that would end up being 210,000. So
Mhm.
now you got 210,000. If you can buy the house and renovate that house for 210,000, you don't need a down payment.
You don't need a down payment. That's right.
You just need
sometimes-
14%
Right.
annual interest.
Well, and
No,
So
but
this is-
actually,
okay, so
actually,
let's
like
back
I've
up.
been talking shit.
Let's
I've been
back up.
talking
Let's
shit.
back up and talk about
Yeah.
this moral and immoral thing. One of the things that you know, when you start to take your own money and put it back into projects, um, you know, one of the things is that the money that you're getting as a payback, like for working on this project, like if you're drawing money out of the hard money lender, like he's giving you out of that 210 you're allotted, he's giving you 150 for the purchase, but you have another 60,000 left.
Mm-hmm.
And you pull, that 20,000. It's not that easy. You have to actually show them the work you've done and the receipts
Like do
for it,
draws, right?
and then they give you that money back. Well, you're kind of taking that same money and paying it right back to them. Like it goes into the same bank account, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, I think I miss.
So the interest per month,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times, like I'm always like, man, I had like a moral kind of question about where, like, should I have this money separate or should it be like, because it's gonna wash out no matter what. But like you're gonna get that money back and just pay it right back to them for the end of the month interest, right?
Yeah, I think I had this conversation with a bank at some point, and I said they were talking about like you have to start making interest payments immediately. I think they were like, how much? Okay, so just as an example, how much money do you need? Well, I need $100,000, but they're like, okay, we're going to start paying interest immediately. In that case, I need $107,000.
Right.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, if I need to, like, whatever deal you give me, Mr. Bank, I just need more money to pay you back with your own money.
Right.
Like, if I have to pay interest immediately, then okay, I'm gonna need more money.
Yeah. No, that's and you learn how to play a little bit, um, where so I had a deal that the house was an as is house was probably worth 180. But the as renovated I knew was going to be significantly more than what I was purchasing it for. It was, I think, as renovated came back at like, I don't know, 320 or something like that.
So 140 over the purchase price.
Right. Well, no, the purchase price was 200. So 120.
Oh, so 120 over.
120,
Okay.
120 over.
At least at 180.
Yeah, I did, but so I was talking about the difference. So that was the what I thought the house was actually worth versus what I was paying, right?
Gotcha.
So as is, I think they would have valued it at 180, but I was paying 200 for it, and so I knew that I couldn't get the as is value. So I said, just give me the as renovated, right? So they came in and were 3 something, and then they lopped off 30% of that, which was what? I mean, my brain's going mush.
What was
$90,000.
the as appraised? What was it?
310.
310. So, so 310. So that'd be 93 is what you. So whatever. 310 minus 93.
310 minus 90, so it's
217.
217, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was buying the house for 200.
So you got 17 grand in your pocket.
Right.
Go buy some Gucci wallets.
Well, and so for me, I was
why
like,
did I say Gucci
don't know.
wallets? I think it's because we've had a lot of beers.
Yeah, we've had a lot of beers. Plus, you have a Gucci wallet, I think, right?
No, I have a Cole Haan wallet.
Cole Haan.
That's 4 or 5 years old. It was actually Misty bought it
I
from
just got
my
this
wife.
wallet, and this will be like an infomercial. Nomadic, have you seen these?
No, is it
Just,
waterproof?
You just what? You just put your 4 favorite cards up here, and then you just like pull it, and you can have kind of like your favorite cards up here. But it also gives you the option to put like cards down here. So you could fit 4 cards down here, and then cash goes kind of on this pocket right here, or cash or coins.
Where do you put your rubbers?
They don't fit.
Oh, I don't know. I don't use them.
Neither of us.
That was Isaac.
Neither of us used it.
Isaac said that.
I don't know. Oh my gosh. That's a great wallet. You should buy it. Beer. Someone give me some free money.
Hey, can you beat on the table some more so we can hear it in the microphone? Yeah, thank you.
I don't think you'll hear it in the microphone. And I've got heavy hands.
So I feel like we're getting pretty close to wrapping this thing up.
Yeah, sure.
But
okay,
I just want to make sure, like, we're not leaving any listeners, watchers with blue balls.
Financing part of it real quick. So once you, and so that scenario that I just gave,
Okay. I love the fact that we actually explained for free how you buy a house with no down payment.
right,
Like this is not some infomercial bullshit. Like we actually said, okay, you get someone to appraise it as renovated. You go out and you find a good deal, which the way you do that is avoid real estate signs.
right, avoid real estate signs.
Oh, and here's
On your
like
drive home, look for the dilapidated house. You can
yeah.
write a note. Write a note. So here's a couple.
Yeah, yeah. So
I
let
want to
me
say this stuff,
okay,
but
say it,
okay.
say it.
So
You've already said it, say it
you
again.
can you could like a handwritten note. Like you'll get the fake ones in the mail, and you're like, that's a fake
Oh,
handwritten note. No, I'm talking about like pull a piece of paper out from your car, rip it, and like take a quarter of it off, and be like, my
spill some
name,
coffee
like
on
my
it.
name's Isaac. I love your house. I live in the neighborhood, not far from you. And I was just wondering if you'd be interested in selling your house. Boom! I've had a call back from one like that before.
Yeah.
You know, and Facebook messaging, like stalk them. Like we're all good at it.
Okay, yeah. So that's another thing. Okay, I'm going to talk about this. If you want to add anything in, man, you can stalk the shit out of some people.
Yeah.
So first of all, you see a property you like. Here in Dallas, we have DCAD,
Mm-hmm.
DCAD.org
Dallas Central Appraisal
district, the Dallas
District.
Central Appraisal.
Yep,
So
that's it.
it's Dallas. That's Dallas County.
Right, Dallas. Dallas.
Yeah. So we need to distinguish between Dallas, the city, and Dallas County. So Dallas. So typically, all of this property tax records are done at the county level. So you can go to like online. You can go to pretty much any county, and you can find out who owns the property. Right.
Right.
So a lot of times when
So
you
Google that by appraisal district.
yeah,
So like if you're in a different city that you've
Bear
never
County,
been,
Travis
whatever
County,
that is,
Tarrant
appraisal
County,
district, and
appraisal
then put
district.
the zip code that you're in, and then you'll find out
Yeah.
who that is.
So now you can find at least a name and address, and that name may be an entity, right? It may
Right.
be like Southern Investments
Right.
LLC or
And
something.
unless you're in like Minnesota, I think it is. Everybody has to
Fuck Minnesota.
but like everybody like there's one of those states where you don't have to actually disclose your name under the entity, but every other state basically you do. And what that means is you can Google that entity, and my secret to Googling it is not very complex. You just put a quotation marks, like, you know,
Yeah, around like Southern Investments, comma
right,
LLC.
right, and then it's going to pull up
The officers,
40 different websites that are trying to sell you the business information on this, but you don't need to pay for it. You just go to it.
like the state treasury website, or
Yeah, so well, no, I'm just
well,
talking about
actually,
like
you
I'm
know,
talking
okay,
about like yellowpages.com.
okay,
Hey, pay an extra $10 and we'll give you this guy's
so
email.
I have a White Pages subscription. It costs me $8.95 a month.
Mhm.
And it does reverse phone number lookups, reverse address lookups, and it is so fucking worth it to me. I think,
Really?
yeah, like I use it all the time. I don't know, like I don't even do that much real estate, but like I
Yeah.
feel like I use it because yeah. So what I do is like a lot of times like you'll look up a property and it'll say the owner is at PO Box 2094, you know, and so it's a PO Box, right? So what do? So you Google the PO Box, right? And the PO Box comes up with a website for like Smith and Guerin law firm, right?
Yeah.
And then you call a law firm, and like so the
Right.
point of this is you just keep following the breadcrumbs. You will
Right.
find the owner.
I found a phone number on Facebook the other day in the craziest way. I'd looked up this family, this lady that owned this property. She had it listed as Jurek property. No, I shouldn't have said that out loud, but whatever. She had listed as Jurek. I went and looked at it.
Well, can you spell it incorrectly so you can confuse people?
WICEJKR.
Okay, WI.
I've been
Okay.
drinking too
Anyways,
much.
keep going.
So I looked it up. It listed several officers under the company, and I went and looked that name up on Facebook. And at first, I wasn't sure if I found the name, but I kept on. I would just literally go to the friends list, and some people block their friends list, but some people don't, because you could see mutual friends or all friends. And I always go to all friends and search, and I would search for that same last name. And then I started kind of like cross referencing that with this other site that's showing me 4 different names. And sure enough, there was this one unique name that stood out. And so I went to her page, and the very first picture she had on there was like, "Hey, does someone want to buy these miles from me? Call me at blah blah blah. Here's my cell phone."
Holy shit,
And so I
dude!
was like, "Yes." I
That's some
I,
amazing Google stalking.
I took a
Okay,
screenshot
if
of
you're
it.
afraid to Google stalk, you will not be successful in real estate.
Right.
You have to Google stalk.
Yep.
Good.
Facebook.
Yeah, whitepages.com, reverse phone lookup. Like I found this guy trying to find a guy who owned a property. The property was listed, like the address went to a law firm in Oklahoma, which we're in Texas. I called the law firm in Oklahoma. They said that company's been out of business. Like we used to do their taxes. They've been out of business for years. I'm like, do you have any contacts? No. Okay. So then I look up once again the records, like
Mm-hmm.
who used to own this, and then once again white pages, and so then I go to like whitepages.com. If you like, this is not an ad, but for like $8.95, like reverse lookup, and it gives you like 13 phone numbers,
Yeah.
and you just start dialing them.
Yeah.
Like I'm looking for Bob Smith. Is this Bob Smith? Yes, this is Bob Smith. Hey, Bob Smith. Did you used to own like XYZ Corporation? And he's like, no. Okay, sorry. Bye. Bob Smith. Yes, this is Bob Smith. Did you used to own XYZ Corporation? Yeah, we shut that down about 10 years ago. Okay, well, like, do you still own a piece of property at 123 Main Street? Well, I don't know. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. And like, yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah.
you got like I just can't beat this into people's heads enough. Is like you got to follow the breadcrumbs.
Mm-hmm.
You got to like just
And that
grind.
stuff's
You got
honestly,
to grind
but
on this
that
shit.
stuff's honestly the most fun.
It is.
Because who doesn't love
It's like
to
a
be
fucking
sneaky?
mystery book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just like, ooh, oh, that, they must have gotten a divorce, or
Yes.
it's like,
So I cross reference the database with the
right.
interchange,
And then
and
the one random person, the one random family member that shows up with like an extra family member, and you're like, oh, he must be an outcast. Like everybody else hates him, but this one family member still is in contact
he's the
with him.
illegitimate
He's like,
black sheep.
he's like everybody hates him except Bill. Bill still loves him. He's still friends with him on Facebook.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
No, it's interesting. And the other thing is, I mean, man, you run across a lot of people that I feel like, like we all, like, I don't know. I feel like you're a good person. I'm a good person. Like we generally
I'm better
act,
than you. Just
probably
kidding.
so.
I'm
We
just kidding.
generally act like in an upstanding way. Like we
Mm,
don't try to hurt. We try to avoid hurting people.
right.
Let's say that we try to avoid telling lies. We try to, and you run across people sometimes that um, are dicks. Like you got to deal with them.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean,
You're like, hey man, like I just want to do a fair deal, but like you think you have some leverage over me, and you're gonna fucking twist my arm,
right.
and you're gonna get some shit.
Right. No, I'm not going to get into the details because it would be another 2-hour conversation. But the one of the deals I didn't talk about was the only deal I ever didn't make. I think I made $10. I think that's what we showed on the K1. $10 earning on it.
Sweet deal.
Yeah, it was awesome. But actually,
What was the ROI on that?
Yeah, boo.
0.00001%.
But you told me this after that deal was done, and it was that kind of person. It was the kind of person that had his own interest.
Was this 115?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And that was the 3333 golden nugget one.
Yeah.
Like we bought it for 150. We should have easily been all in renovation, interest and everything for less than 150 and easily sold it for 450. But because it sat on the market, anyways, I could get into
carry costs.
I could get into the whole deal. But that was like the golden nugget deal. So that I guess that's another lesson, right? When things look like perfect, like just be prepared.
Well, I think that's built into your golden nugget deal, right? Like 33% margin is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Nobody sustainably makes 33% margin.
No,
so like that, I think this is a good point, is that you plan for 33% margin, knowing that schedules are going to get delayed, knowing that people are going to
Right.
change prices, knowing that you're going to find an Indian burial ground and have to
Yeah.
mitigate your backyard. Like there's all like no
I
one
mean,
ever,
you
no
know
one
this,
ever
but we're
like
in a rough.
here's the thing. Like okay, I want to like explain this from like a construction perspective. People are like, why is projects over? Because you don't plan for you plan for like kind of the normal scenario, like the predictable scenario, right? Like you're like, hey, here's a bathroom that costs $10,000. Like you don't ever get down the road and go, hey, we decided we didn't need a bathroom, so we just saved $10,000. It's like, no, no, you need a fucking bathroom. Like, like, but like you always discover things. You
Right.
never like what could potentially be in your budget that you would later decide you didn't need. It's like, hey, I found a buyer for this property here in Dallas, Texas, where it gets to 110 in the summer, and they said they don't want air conditioning. So we just found a way to save $8,000. Like there's no way to
Yeah.
like pull things out of a
Right.
budget. Things always go in. They
Right.
never come out.
Right. Right.
Schedules always get longer. Budgets always get bigger. Period. End of story.
Yep.
So yeah, I think planning for 33% margin, 33% purchase, 33% renovation, 33%
Right.
profit sounds ridiculous because actually it is ridiculous
Yeah.
because it will never happen that way. But plan for it that way
Yeah.
and you'll end up with good
Look for deals
15
that way.
20%
Yeah.
margins. Yeah.
Look for deals that way. So to finish out I want to get back to this, but the hard money piece of it, once you get the money, so now in that last scenario, people might ask, well, now you've got a $200,000 house. Can you really renovate it for 17,000? No, I can't. I need about 75. But because I've done enough deals now, I have some of my own money that I can kind of put back in. And then a lot of that is like, Home Depot money, right? Like I have a credit card at Home Depot, and I know that material cost is going to be 20,000, so I could put it on that card, and that limit has grown with time. And so you learn to kind of like, um, you know,
Just get scrappy.
yeah, just get scrappy, right? Learn how to borrow money from different places, like things like if you've got an extra $5,000 in cash, and so this is a scenario right now we're going through, like we've got some extra income, and I was going to pay off this truck that I'm buying from my. I'm cheap too. That's the other thing, but
Yeah.
I'm buying it from my mom's husband. It's like a $15,000 truck. I was going to give him 10,000 down, um, and then I was going to finance the rest. But then part of me was like, oh, but I have the money. I'll just give it to him. But then I started thinking about it. I was like, man, I have to borrow this money, the same exact money. I'm going to have to borrow at X amount of
Yeah,
dollars.
yeah. If he'll loan it to me at 6% and I can put it over here at 8%,
Right.
then
Right.
duh.
And so I started thinking about like the bank's going to lend it to me at 2%. Right. And I'm like, and I have to borrow it at this percent over the next 2 years. That money equals $500. And that doesn't sound like a lot to a lot of people, or may not. But I'm like, that's, you do that enough times,
But
and
if you could borrow the world's money at 6% and loan it at 8%,
yeah,
you would be like you'd be stupid.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Stupid
So,
loaded, yeah.
yeah, hustle, just do it.
Okay, so sum it up. I don't know, man. I don't know. How do you want to sum it up? Top 3 tips, like one tip, like
Golly. So you asked me, what do I tell friends? What's the 5 minute? And then we never finished
yeah. What's
it.
the elevator
It's not
pitch?
even. It's not even
Let's sum
elevator
it
pitch.
back up.
Look,
What's
you're driving home. You find those houses.
so it's about finding them,
It's about finding them. Absolutely.
finding the deals.
And
Is
then
what it takes.
I would say probably for every 15 houses, you're going to get one solid lead.
It's starting to sound like a hookup podcast.
Yeah, I mean, it just is. For every about 15. I'm not saying that because
Every 15 girls you talk to, you get one phone number.
yeah. No, I mean, it's just some of the houses you're like, oh, this house is dilapidated. Well, a young couple from Seattle that, got transferred here and was looking for a cheap house, they just bought the house 6 months ago. Well, they're out. Like, they're in that house because they've got like a high tolerance for, crappy places, and they're willing to work on it. Right.
Yeah.
And then you've got like the guy that inherited from his mom 10 years ago and he doesn't work. And you're like, well, he's going to live there till he dies. And
Yeah.
then you've got then you start to weed them out pretty quickly. You can kind of
Yeah, I
figure that
understand the
out.
motivation. That's another thing about what we talked about earlier about the Central Appraisal District.
Yeah.
You can kind of get an idea of what the value of the house has been, and you can go even deeper into the public records, like Rome,
Yeah. So
whatever that record,
like
something
let's be clear about that. So there's the appraisal
ROAM.
district, but then there is generally a separate website where you can find deeds
Yeah,
and liens.
liens, and that's typically where you can start to find transactional
You can
values, what they
right what
paid
they
for
paid for
it.
the property and whether or not there's liens on the property. And then a third next website is property taxes. And if they're late on their property taxes, you can look that up. That's public information for
Yeah,
everybody to
so
see.
that's the comptroller.
Comptroller, Texas
Yeah.
comptroller, yeah. And so
Which is really weird that you make your check out to an individual when you pay
it
your
is
property taxes.
strange.
It's like
It is
I'm just
really.
writing this check to a dude.
Yeah.
No, but yeah. So
How much fraud has
so
happened there?
Rome ROAM
Yeah.
dot
I
whatever
think
it
it's
is.
Rome Dallas dot.
But Rome does a bunch of different
Oh, do
records,
they?
right? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
So I
that.
think Rome just has a Dallas site, but
Oh,
Rome
okay.
is like where you find a lot of public stuff, like
Yeah,
deed records and
you
stuff.
can even find liens for like, hospitals against
Yeah,
people.
or like mowing liens,
Right.
right? Like someone didn't mow their grass
But
in the
all that
city.
stuff's good because hey, like if you find hey they
That's
purchased
good leverage, man.
property for $100,000, but they've got a mechanic's lien for $20,000 and they're $20,000 back in taxes. Let's say they bought it 10 years ago at 100,000 and they haven't paid it off. They owe, you kind of back yourself into that what they owe. They owe I don't know $70,000 on it after 10 years, but then they're $40,000 in debt because of these other things. Well, now hey, they're underwater right now, and I've on that one note that I got to call back. I looked real quickly on my phone, and I could quickly see that they were back $50,000 in property taxes. And I said, hey, I happen to notice that your taxes were 50,000 back, and I hope this doesn't offend you, but I'd love to help you get out of this.
Yeah.
And I got to call back. In fact, they wanted too much, and I kind of let the deal go. But they circled back around 3 days ago, and they're like, "Hey, are you sure you're not interested?" And they still want too much, but they're selling to somebody else, basically.
Yeah, but I understand the situation because a lot of times, I mean, different sellers have different needs, and
Yep.
if you can satisfy certain needs, like the property that we bought for the brewery, we needed to rezone it, but once again, she was upside down on her tax, she was behind on her taxes, and
Hmm.
so she was behind about 30
I gotta
grand on her
stand up.
taxes.
Keep on talking.
She was behind about 30 grand on her taxes, and then but we knew she needed some cash as well, so like we loaned her 50,000 against the property, so we actually had first lien on the property for $50,000, which is also her lawyer got us out of putting it on the whole property. We actually only got it on half the property, but it's also a sweet deal to get first lien for 50 G's, right,
Yeah.
on a $1 million property.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, man, there's all sorts of and man, I wish we would have talked a little bit more about some of these terms like first lien, which first lien is basically if you loan money against a property, you have a lien against it. So
Hard
if
money lenders always are first lien.
yeah, so that means if that ever forecloses, you have the first right, first lien against it, and then there's second lien, there's third liens, whatever. But yeah, anytime you can get a first lien position, like if you can get into a first lien, like we were kind of trying to work ourselves into a first lien position on $1 million property for 50 grand, which would have been a really sweet deal. But we ended up, like that wasn't the point. The point was to get her the money she needed to carry her through the closing period. And this is another thing. Once again, commercial real estate. I'm going to talk about this really quickly. However many rules there are in residential, there are fewer in commercial. Like it's pretty wide open. Like if you're looking at a property and it's not in the condition you want it, I mean, you can always tell the seller you got to replace the roof, you got to fix it, you got to. I mean, just like residential, you got to rezone it, you got to replat it. You got to whatever you got to do. I mean, the world is your oyster. Just make whatever deals make sense for both parties and throw the rules out the window. So,
Yep.
all right, man. Anything in closing?
No. Yeah. So my brother I used to always think of him as like unorthodox and dumb. I mean, in the sense of how he did his deals. I was like, that's stupid. I would never do that. And the more and more I get into this, the more I'm like, my brother's a genius. And I don't mean dumb like he's not smart. I mean like that's a crazy deal. Like who would ever do that? That's dumb. Like but now I'm like, oh man, he just spent the last 6 years buying that house, you know, with the craziest terms, but he bought it for $150,000 and it's worth $350,000. You know, I mean, just be creative. You know,
Yeah.
don't ever get stuck with just and I mean that like he was like, I think that deal he was like, I'm gonna give you $5,000 within the next 10 days, and then within 30 days I'm going to give you another 5,000, and then after that I'm going to give you 1,000 for 6 months, and then after that we're going to settle into payments of $10,000 every X amount. I mean,
Every 17 and a half
it
months.
was just so out there, and I'm like, where did you come up with these
Well,
numbers?
it sounds like he was kind of talking from a position of what he was capable of,
Right, that's exactly
based on
right.
what his cash flow was going to be or
Right,
whatever, which
right.
is fine. Like if you can make your needs meet their needs,
Yeah.
like that's what a
And
deal is all
and
about,
he
right?
he has done that time and time again, and it's awesome. So yeah, be creative.
Be creative. All right. Well, I mean, man, I think we went pretty long
Yeah, how
here.
long did we go?
I have no idea.
We always talk forever.
Hour
No, two.
plus.
I bet it's two-ish.
It's really close to that.
Probably two-ish.
We'll find out when we shut off.
Awesome. Thank you,
Isaac,
sir.
thank you so much.
Yeah, it was
A
good.
lot of beers come in, some beers got to go out.
Yeah.
Good night.